Anger is sharp, remember? And it points at the thing that needs to be healed. So if we analyze a situation in the light of anger and say, well, I'm mad because that person said that to me, or I'm mad because of I had to wait for an hour for something, whatever. Whatever. I'm mad because I got cut off in traffic, or I'm mad. I mean, you can make an infinite list of reasons on the surface why you're mad. But the truth is that what really happens, here's the mechanics, folks, of what happens. Now we're going to talk about the mechanics of what happens when we're angry. Inside, something is out of balance. It can sit there for years out of balance until the highest intelligence of the physiology says, it's time for that to go. At that point, that thing that was buried deep inside for a long time starts to wiggle its way up to the surface. And as it starts to wiggle its way out of your being, you start to not feel good. The feeling starts usually at a really abstract level at first. And we aren't usually, as we talked about earlier, wired to notice things at really, really deep levels. So it'll start churning down here at some very fine level of consciousness. And what that does, if we ignore it, it'll churn up higher. And if we continue to ignore it, it'll churn up higher. Now, you could catch that anger somewhere in this area and go, hey, you know what? Something's bugging me and it's really in there. I'm going to look at it and I'm going to fix something. But a lot of times we're not in the habit of doing that. A lot of times what happens is that anger churns all the way up. It gets pretty close to the surface. And the next thing we know, something up here has been activated. Something at the superficial physical level of creation has been activated. It's out there. It's in our face. And we're like, what is that? That person, how could they even think of saying such a thing? Or whatever. And so at that point, we're looking into a mirror. Now, usually this sort of mirror, because remember that thing was deep, deep somewhere in the body, and it was probably kind of small too. It often can be like a little pinprick somewhere deep in the heart somewhere or something. So what the nature does, what the environment does, which is the environment is our mirror, it'll take that thing and it'll magnify it and then put it in front of us. And when it's in front of you, magnified, then you see it really well. But the problem is in interpretation, because a tendency then when it's sitting in front of you, magnified as your friend who's saying something that's hurting your feelings or having to wait for something that you didn't feel you should have had to wait for or whatever, at that point, the tendency is to blame that thing that's outside of us. However, and remember, that's the low road response, right? So what we want to do is we want to get into the high road response with it. We want to step back and witness it a little bit and go, wait a minute, this thing is my gift. This has come to me to show me what I need to heal deep inside. And the very moment, and I can tell you guys this from experience because I went through years of working with this thing with anger, the moment you shift your attention away from blaming somebody else and realize, everybody, we have to admit to ourselves that when we're doing that, it's kind of a little bit ego happening, right? Because we're like, well, it's not my fault. It's not my fault I had to stand in line. Well, we're not really here to blame anybody. All we're here to do is to get at that thing that needs attention. So we get in there to that little area, we shift the attention away from the thing that's making us angry that we think is the source and say, okay, where is it inside me? What is it reflecting in my heart? What is it reflecting deep within me? The moment you shift, the anger quits hurting. Anger is one of the most painful emotions. But if you can shift your awareness away from blaming this person or blaming that situation and say, what is it trying to make me see or look at? And look at that thing, then all of a sudden it opens up this whole landscape of potential for inner transformation. And it only ever happens at a time and at a moment that is absolutely appropriate for you to address that thing, when you have all the resources and all the facility to actually deal with it. Otherwise, it'll just stay buried. There's no point. Nature doesn't do things for no good reason. There's always a good reason. So, anyway, let us allow ourselves to accept and receive those moments as gifts and use them as leverage for self-healing. And as we do so, you will find that things aren't going to make you angry as much anymore. And when the anger comes, it just washes away in an instant the minute we recognize what's going on. I love you guys. You did a great job with that. May that always serve you. We're going in and doing a little rewiring up here for the low road, high road response to help, because there's some habits and there's some like neural pathways that we're kind of like in the habit of, getting upset. I don't think I'm going to get what I want. So we're just rewiring. And who's rewiring? You are rewiring your own brain. In fact, we restructure about 70% of the dendrites in our brains every day. Brain is a very malleable organ. But the nice thing is that once we get used to the new pathways, then the tendency will be to flow in those pathways. And may all of you find the process of mastering this approach to anger faster and more efficient and more perfect than I did. May you never have to suffer. Because for me, it took a few years. Okay, let's look at the next question.